I want the record to show that if anyone falls off the stage, like happened one other time when I was at a manufacturing facility in St. Louis, I want to know it's not because I spoke too long, okay? We've been going a while here, and all worthwhile. Sergio, congratulations, man. Sergio reminded me the last time we saw each other, it was in Venice. And it was in Venice, Italy. It's good to see you here, and it's good to see the relationship that Fiat and Chrysler have had, and we, all these workers, all Americans, thank you for your good job. And Bob King, Mr. President, I want to thank you as well. Bob and I have known each other a long time. I've been engaged with the UAW for a long time. Matter of fact, I would not be in this job but for the UAW back in 1972, supporting a 29-year-old kid. And in my state, when I got started, we were a small state. Almost 10% of my entire workforce was UAW, including suppliers. And we had the largest GM plant outside of Detroit, and we had one of the largest Chrysler plants. And my state's been battered. My state has been battered and really hit very badly by the recession and by the unfair competition that's taken place. And not as many guys left and women left, Bob, but thank you for your leadership. And I might add, in days gone by, because I've been around doing this a long time, one of the reasons for the comeback is the relationship between business and labor, is the way they're working together now, and the way in which all of you here are working with Chrysler Fiat. Folks, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the passport to come into the city again. I'm glad to be back. As he said last time, he looked like a linebacker when I was a kid. And we were celebrating another event back then in Toledo and getting back in the business of manufacturing. I won't go into that, but it's great to see you again, buddy. I also want to thank Marcy. Marcy has been she'll not want to remind you of this, but her first campaign, I came out and campaigned for her. She was running way ahead. I campaigned for her. She barely won after I left. But since then, she's rectified all that. And Marcy, you have been absolutely indomitable in your support of American workers, and that's not hyperbole. You have. And I say to my friend Sherrod Brown, that Thunderbird would have been all right if they put a bigger engine in it. They should have put a bigger engine in it. Now that's coming from a Corvette guy. They should have put a bigger engine in that vehicle because it would have stayed, it would have worked. And I don't know about the color, Sherrod, but I tell you what, I do what my daughters tell me too. So that's not hard. And Gov, look, this part isn't about politics. This is one of the most stand-up guys I've ever met in my life. This is the guy who doesn't forget where he came from, and he came from a hard scrapple situation. He remembers it, he doesn't talk about it. Everything he does, everything I've watched him do is all about giving people a fair shake, because he's convinced, absolutely convinced, you give an American just a fair shake, just an even break. No advantage, just an even break. And they'll do just fine. They'll do just fine. And Gov, it's a pleasure to be with you. And Lieutenant Governor Fisher, you and I have been friends a long time. Thank you for all the great work that you do. Look, folks, I had a great tour of the production line. Doug was going to tell me who the most important person on the stage was. I asked him who it was. He said he didn't know who the hell it was. He's the second most important. I still haven't figured out who the most important one is. I figure it's got to be Marcy. But all kidding aside, I have spent my entire adult life walking assembly lines, and that's not an exaggeration. I mean that literally. As a matter of fact, if you're unhappy that I'm your vice president, you can blame it on General Motors. 1963, General Motors were running 3 shifts at their Boxwood plant in Delaware. My dad was an automobile man. He said, Joey, you had good paying jobs there. I went and applied for a job on the 3rd shift. Had they hired me, I'd be a proud UAW member, and you'd be in real good luck. I wouldn't be vice president. So blame it on GM. Blame it on GM. But I've spent a lot of time on assembly lines for real. And I've watched the transitions going all the way back to the 60s when I worked for my dad, with my dad. And I've watched it. He was not UAW. He sold the vehicles. I watched how it's changed. And I watched what all of you have gone through. At first, mechanization wasn't something greeted wholeheartedly. It was something that was viewed as costing jobs. But it was needed to begin to compete and to be able to compete with the rest of the world. Well, you've done that, and you now outcompete. On this production line, watching good union workers making great vehicles in an award-winning plant is a good thing to see again. And I'm confident what I always suspected. Ohio may have been, as you all say, the first in flight. But quite frankly, the auto industry has always been the place where this state derives its economic strength and vitality. It's been a major, major piece of this state, like my little state of Delaware. And it's been that way for decades. And I can see today, literally I can see today, it's going to be that way again for decades to come because of all of you. And I thank you for that. Look, I'm the son of an automobile man. My dad, I read about how he owned a vehicle. My dad never owned a dealership. My dad ran the 3 largest dealerships in succession in Delaware for over 35 years. An honorable, gentle, graceful man. And as the joke goes in our household, the son or daughter of an automobile man is the first person to learn in the neighborhood what the word recession means, and the last one to learn what recovery means, because it's always automobiles in first, and usually automobiles out last. The truth of the matter is, we're seeing a little bit of change in that dynamic right now. And I might add, since 1973, there's been a Jeep parked in my driveway to this very day. And folks, if the Secret Service would allow me to drive, which I'm not allowed to do, the President and I, major complaint is we're not allowed to drive anymore. If I was, I'd take that black Wrangler around the corner off the side, if I could. Look, trying not to take too much of your time, but seeing all the great economic activity right here on this line, with suppliers humming next door, I can't help but think of the contrast between the dark things that this economy was showing when we took office in January 2009. Back then, the depth of the recession was becoming clearer and clearer. In the previous 6 months, we'd already lost 3 million jobs before we even got into office. And now you see the economy, instead of contracting at 7%, we were a minus GDP of 6.4% the first quarter we took over at the end of 2008. And for the last 4 quarters, we've been growing. Not as much as we can and should, but we've been growing at an average over 3.5%. And over the first half of last year, we took office, before the legislation that all these folks up here supported to allow this resurgence to take place, before any of that could be done, we had lost another 4 million American jobs. And folks, they're not just statistics. My dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about dignity. It's about respect. It's about your place in the community. And over 8.5 million people in this great recession have not only had their jobs taken away from them, but their dignity stripped from them. Through no fault of their own. Through no fault of their own. You know, we talk about these statistics like they're numbers. The governor's heard me say this before. The longest walk a man or woman can make is up a short flight of stairs to their child's bedroom to say, honey, I'm sorry, but we got to move. You can't go to the same school next year. You can't be in the same Little League team. Daddy or mommy lost their job, or the bank's coming to take the house. Too many Buckeyes have made that walk up that short flight of stairs, and they're hurting. They're hurting badly. And so, all these jobs we talk about as if they're mere statistics are human lives, families, that are being caught and squeezed, losing their ability to provide for themselves, and in the process, losing their dignity. Against this backdrop, the President and I were sworn in. Our goal was to do everything we could as fast as we could to keep this great recession from morphing into a depression, literally into a depression. We knew we had to act, and we did with the help of the folks standing behind me. We stabilized the financial system, an unpopular thing to do, but necessary. We stabilized the housing market. We passed historic legislation to help families hit the hardest by the recession pull themselves back up and make investments in industries of the future, like we've done here in Toledo. Like we've done here in Toledo with new technologies for solar energy and new technologies that are going to be the technologies of the future. This also used to be the glass capital of the world. There's no reason why it can't be again. But there's a sense in the last administration that somehow we had to move over. We had to move over and make room for China. We had to move over and make room for other nations because somehow we couldn't compete in the same industries at the same level. Well, Barack and I reject that notion. We know a rising tide rises all boats. I'd like China to succeed. I want all the rest of the countries to succeed. But the idea that we have to accommodate ourselves to be number two in anything is something we refuse to do. So, folks, with help of Sherrod Brown in the United States Senate and your Congresswoman, we went and fixed a broken healthcare system. We drove up the quality of the healthcare system and drove down the cost to middle-class families everywhere. And of course, we helped to stabilize and revitalize the auto industry. And today, we're seeing the fruits of that important investment. Look, we heard loud and clear from our opponents. Remember these phrases? The market will sort it out. Translated, middle-class people's body will litter the roadside. The industry needs to die to be reborn, not realizing that tens of thousands of jobs would die with it. Ladies and gentlemen, these people didn't have the same faith we did in the resilience of the American people, the American auto worker, and in American business. I wish those who wanted us to walk away from all this, from this industry, could see what I've seen here today and stand before all of you. I see an incredibly productive assembly plant that is a leader in the supply chain management integration of all the industries in the country. I see a facility that has twice received the Harbor Award as the most efficient assembly plant in North America. I see what the reports show, that it takes only, as Marcy said, 13.5 hours to build a Jeep Wagoneer in Toledo, which is an hour and a half faster than built by any other competitor in North America. How do you do it? Now, I know all of you know how you do it. You do it every day. But a lot of folks who may pick up, this may be carried on the news, a lot of folks out there don't understand how it's done. There's a lot of folks who don't understand how the plant works. So let me explain. There's a very compelling story here on this line about the relationship you've developed between the end-of-line assembly plant and your three key suppliers on this same property. There are nearly 3,000 jobs, American jobs, on the supply side of this, not in this building, on the supply side, making the parts directly put in the vehicles that come in a conveyor belt into this plant. That's not even counting the jobs of those suppliers who make the tires, the manufacturing plants out there, the steel mills, the glass makers, the plastic molding companies, the stamping plants that fabricate the parts, the truck drivers who transfer all of this. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs associated with that automobile, other than all of you standing here who assemble it in 13.5 hours. I'm told no other plant in North America has as tightly integrated a relationship where the assembly lines in all 4 of the facilities on this site are physically connected, and the suppliers have a responsibility for parts of the manufacturing process that historically and traditionally were based on the assembly line. Here at this facility, 3 of your key suppliers have a direct and uninterrupted flow from their assembly lines into yours. The exit of one supplier is the entry to the next. Only one other auto plant in the world is integrated this way. Sergio, you've done one heck of a job. And by being so mindful of the importance of your supplier base, you've achieved amazing efficiencies here, and you're building a great product. When the President and I committed this administration to save the auto industry, we knew that stabilizing the supplier base would be key. And in fact, even before, as Marcy would tell you, even before the investments were made in GM and Chrysler, we launched and applied what we called an auto suppliers program, support program of $5 billion. An initiative to give the suppliers the confidence to continue to ship parts, paying their employees, not laying them off, operating while the fate of the auto companies were still unknown. We had to keep them alive. And as car companies gained enough strength and capital markets began to come back, we were able to terminate that program in early April, sooner than we thought, with companies repaying all of the loans in full, including fees and interest from that $5 billion. The American taxpayer actually made some money. That's right. The American taxpayer has paid back in full and made interest on their investment. But look at what it really means. Put together all the auto supply industries, all that they constitute, and they constitute one of the largest manufacturing subsectors in our economy. The direct suppliers employ 435 workers, including 51,000 suppliers, workers, here in Ohio. Auto suppliers directly employ more than 3 times the number of workers on this assembly line and assembly plants all over America to support the production of a classic American vehicle like the Jeep Wrangler. It's a story that gets lost. People focus putting all of the parts together, but they don't think of all that goes into getting those parts to the assembly line. That's what happens here. The links to the supplier chain are getting stronger and stronger every day. And most recent data shows that suppliers' employment grew 10% over last year, the best showing in over a decade. Chrysler's records show that at peak of the crisis last year, more than a third of their parts suppliers were suffering financial distress. 13% were in danger of collapsing. Today, that third has shrunk to a fifth, and almost none of the parts suppliers remain in a high-risk status. 0.1% is all that remain in jeopardy. And the effects are reverberating throughout the industry. In the year before we took office, the auto industry shed 431,300 good-paying middle-class jobs. But in the years since GM and Chrysler emerged from bankruptcy because of the loans and reorganization, the auto industry employment has increased 76,300. Our first year, 76,300. Their last year were 430,000 lost. It's a huge reversal, and one we'd never have seen had we listened to those who told us to walk away. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to read from you one thing. It'll be short. There's a famous magazine called The Economist, one of the most respected magazines in the world, a very, very conservative, economically conservative magazine. It's sort of the Bible of the free market. That's my characterization. Let me read the headline from August the 19th. I wish every press person were this candid. It says, General Motors, headline, Government Motors No More. Subheadline, an apology is due to Barack Obama. His takeover of GM could have gone horribly wrong, but it has not. Then, 3 lines from the document. Many people thought that the bailout and the smaller one involving Chrysler was unwise. Governments have historically been lousy stewards of industry. Lovers of free markets, including this paper, this magazine, The Economist, feared that Obama might use GM as a political tool. Yet the doomsdayers is wrong, I'm quoting. Yet the doomsdayers were wrong. GM is now profitable again, and Chrysler, managed by Fiat, is making progress. Taxpayers may even turn out to make a profit when the government stock in GM is sold in the so-called IPO. Given the panic that gripped the private purse strings last year, it is unlikely that GM would have been anything other than liquidated, sending a cascade of destruction through the supply chain on which its rivals, including Ford, also depended. And the last sentence I'll read says, the lesson for American voters is that their president, a gambler, yes, an interventionist, yes, a socialist, no. The free enterprise system and private capital is the reason why this is coming back, but without a down payment by the American taxpayers, there would have been hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs lost, and this economy would be even further in the tank. And those 76,300 new jobs, close to 40 of them coming from suppliers, wouldn't be around. In total, the big three will have added as many of 11,000 new, decent-paying jobs before this year ends it. What a turnaround in where we've been. Folks, one reason this expansion is particularly important and promising is because of what we call insourcing. You've heard for the last 2 decades, particularly from Morrissey, nothing but about outsourcing. We've outsourced everything. Well, because of the change that's taken place, we're beginning to insource, a fancy term for bringing parts productions back home to the United States from abroad. Now look, I can think of no better example than our own Jeep Wrangler. Last year, fewer than 60% of the parts in that vehicle were domestic parts. This year, 78% are domestic parts. That means American jobs. Look, that's a huge shift to production here in the United States and precisely what's needed to rebuild American manufacturing. Ford and the UAW are working right now together, as the president of UAW can tell you. They're working right now to develop a new plan for sourcing components, including parts, subassemblies, and systems, to companies in the United States from abroad. Folks, it's just good business. Some of these jobs would not have been produced by suppliers outside the United States. But Ford committed to insource jobs to a majority of its assembly, powertrain, and stamping facilities around the country, including, by the way, in Sharonville, the transmission plant here in Ohio. Ford's on pace to bring in-house approximately 2,000 hourly jobs that would have been performed by suppliers outside the country by the year 2012. Look, it's a long, tough road. The U.S. auto industry has returned to profitability from competitiveness. And I might add, I think it would have made my father's heart sing were he alive. 3 months ago in Consumer Reports was the first time in 17 years American consumers said they thought American-made automobiles were better made than foreign-made automobiles. In March, all 3 automakers posted operating profits. This is the first time that's happened since 2004. We also are about to see the first IPO, that's the selling of their stock, of an American car company since 1956. GM has filed the papers to start a process of an IPO that could happen this year. Press asked me appropriately, do I think they'd be able to pay back all the stock? We own 60%. The American people own 60% of GM stock. Are they going to be able to sell it all and all of the profit? I don't know what the number will be, but it's a big number. It's a big number. It's a gigantic transition. As Barack said, he and I did not run for president and vice president to be chairman and vice chairman of the General Motors Corporation. It's about to take place. Obviously, all the industry's problems aren't solved, but I can say with confidence that not only is this industry going to survive, it's going to thrive, ladies and gentlemen. And let me tell you why I believe that. Our actions, as I've stressed, the Recovery Act, the investment in GM and Chrysler, the supplier support program, they played an important role in the turnaround. That's true. But let's face it, all Barack and I did, in fact, all we ever intended to do was clear away the brush left by 8 years of neglect and underinvestment and terrible negligent oversight on the part of the last administration. Clear away the brush to let American entrepreneurs, American businessmen, and American workers go back at what they do best, making things and making a profit. The rest was, and continues to be, up to you and up to American business. It's up to the innovative designers of plants like this, whose inset found new efficiencies by integrating the supplier base. It's up to the investors and the employees and the unions who got together and made necessary sacrifices. You made sacrifices and compromises so that these companies could reemerge from bankruptcy stronger, leaner, and more efficient than they were a decade ago and 2 and 3 decades ago. It's up to the leadership of people like Governor Strickland, who's made such a relentless effort to force bringing back new jobs and providing where the state can be engaged, the down payment for some of these things. And most of all, it's up to the folks working in the line here and next door and the suppliers and throughout the states of this nation, making and assembling parts of a great American automobile. I want to thank you for your commitment to once again lead the world in auto production. And I promise you that the President and I are going to do everything we can to create the conditions to allow this industry to grow and flourish. Because when we do, other industries at home grow and flourish. As I've said many times, I apologize to the governor because we've been together a lot. I say it time and again, I don't know where it's written. I don't know where it's written that it says America will be number 2 or 3 or 4 in automobile production in the 21st century. I don't know where it's written that America can't and will not lead the world again as the greatest automobile manufacturer in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that's what's going to happen. I genuinely believe it. I know the press likes to call me an optimist. I'm an optimist because I understand the journey of the history of this great nation. There is not a thing we cannot do. Not a thing we cannot do. So, folks, don't believe those who tell you this is temporary or this can't be the same kind of march we had starting at the beginning of the last century. I believe it will be. The President believes it will be. The reason our administration took the risk to save the automobile industry in America is that we started off with a basic instinct. We trust the innovative instincts of American business. We have faith in the quality of American workers, and we believe in the grit of the American people. I love these guys who tell me that we're anti-business. Every good president, every great president in history, including Republican presidents, have understood that there are times when the government has to step in and provide seed money. Abraham Lincoln did in the middle of the Civil War by providing $16,000 in bonds for every mile of railroad that was built across the northern part of the United States through the Transcontinental Railroad. Dwight D. Eisenhower did it after Sputnik by putting money into a thing called ARPA, which became DARPA, which created the internet, which 1.7 billion people in the world use and would not have existed without the government investment and research. It's private industry, an initiative that's going to do this. It's our capitalist system will do it. But you got to take away all the impediments. And you got to give just people an even fighting chance. The American auto industry is rebuilding itself. And I believe it will dominate in the 21st century like it did in the 20th. Together, we're going to make sure that America once again leads the world economically. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you all for the tough times you had to go through just to survive to this point. And I want to thank you for having faith in one another and having faith in our ability to actually produce again. May God bless you all. May God bless America, and most of all, may God protect our troops. Thank you very, very much.